He turned water into wine, I turned whiskey into songs. Too many second chances, too many too far gones. Gave me grace along the way, took my heart and led me home. Don't you see? It's a God thing for me. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Heartland Journal Podcast with Steve Abramowitz, Editor-in-Chief of HeartlandJournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal Podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. I am so glad you found us. I think you're going to really like this one. I hope you do. This is episode 425, and I've been so blessed to have this many guests. If you like what you hear, you can go to heartlandjournal.com, heartlandjournal.com, and click on the podcast tab and see all 425 of them. I know you'll like it. And while you're there, be sure to vote for your favorite movie stars and singers. Voting for the 2025 Heartland Awards are going on now. The newest awards chosen by you, the fans, not the corporations. You can buy my book, Songs About the Heartland, there too. Okay, today's show. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking in studio with special guest Michael Rix. Michael Rix sees his music today as a way to spread positivity and light. Through many of his challenges, he has seen healing through music. His mother taught him gospel songs and nursery rhymes. When he was about 4 years old, he would play air guitar along with the music leader at their church. A few years later, when he was around 12 years old, he says he talked a neighbor into selling him his guitar, but it wasn't any church you are familiar with. Growing up in a household where his parents were rabidly devoted to a religious cult that, among other things, preached against the use of modern medicine to the detriment of over 300 church member deaths in under 20 years. Michael took a paddle his father used to hit the children and turned it into a makeshift guitar. After attending college, Rix was selling cars in Ohio in 2007 when Nashville songwriter Wendy Mobley came onto the lot looking to buy a car for his parents. They talked about all the artists Rix had mentioned, and Mobley bought the car and left. But something about that interaction stuck with Rix. He bought his first banjo and watched lessons on YouTube to learn how to play. Now recording King Banjo's Nashville endorses him. He's been in the studio with Amy Grant, performed with Bryan and the Black Crowes, and most recently came back from a tour with the War and Treaty. Plus, he's released an album called I Can See the Sun. His book, From Cult to Country, An Asthmatic's Journey to Find More Air, is a story of ongoing anxiety remission through his love of country music and his knack for taking instruments of pain into instruments of redemption. Let's meet this guy. Sounds fascinating.
Michael, thank you for coming. It's a long time coming, actually. I've known you a while now, so I'm really excited to have you in that chair. How are you today?
Man, it's a beautiful day, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to come and communicate and talk a little bit. And yeah,
you survived the Nashville ice storm, Snowmageddon. So was it hard on Nashville Broadway? Did they shut a lot of things down for you, or was it?
Well, for me, this period of time always is a little bit of a time of reflection and kind of regrouping and putting kind of the business thing back together. So I usually take this time to do that, as everybody's obviously not at shows during the cold weather. But obviously, yeah, Nashville obviously took a beating, and interesting enough, Broadway was one of the places that they got the power back on first, or out of probably a lot of the residential didn't get their power back on as quickly.
Yeah.
So they had Broadway back up and running pretty quick.
Yeah, it is a gem of the city. I don't think they wanted to be out of business very long, so a priority, we'll just call it. So, from cult to country, an asthmatic's journey to find more air. Before we get into your upbringing, in a cult, the first half of that title. What's the find more air part mean to you?
Finding more room to breathe, finding freedom, finding a world that wasn't restricted, that wasn't closed, that wasn't suffocating, as it were, and finding that sense of well-being that I didn't experience in my childhood. So it not only, translated from an actual physical challenge, but actually even more of a psychological and mental health challenge, honestly.
Yeah. No, it is beautiful symmetry once you read the story and understand that. So from your lungs to the environment you grew up in to the big wide world out there, more air was vital, basically for survival. So your parents met at Bowling Green University. Is that a particularly cultish part of the country? What gravitated those two to each other and then on to their life in the cult?
Well, my parents went to church together, 4th Street Baptist Church in Lima, Ohio. The Tuckers on my mom's side and the Rix on my dad's side. And they both attended church together as kids and then went to the inner city schools in Lima, Ohio, and then ultimately went to Lima Senior. And then my dad and mother began dating at prom. And my dad asked my mother to prom, and then they fell in love and started dating. My mom goes to Bowling Green State University as her choice for college. My dad was wanting to enter into the medical field and didn't know what college he wanted to go to. Found out my mother was going there, and obviously they were dating, so he decided he would go to that college as well.
Huh. So your mother had 9 children. You're the oldest of 9. That is not easy on a person. How is she still with us? Do you keep in touch?
Yes, yeah, my mother is definitely still with us. Both my parents are still living. 5 sisters and 3 brothers. My mom was a prayer warrior, and she was a praying woman. She had a little card box that she would have like a 3x5 cards in it, and she'd write scriptures, Bible texts by hand, and she would read those to herself and pray over our family, over her health, over our lives, and it was no small thing for her to pray 3-4 hours a day, just through sit down and be quiet, go wash the laundry, and she'd be sitting in the rocking chair, rocking back and forth, one foot over the other, cross legs, and she'd be kind of praying to herself and just kind of under her breath, and she'd be reading those, and that's really how my mom walked through life. I'd come in from playing outside and see her praying like that whenever she had space between things. Is very, very much part of her life. So I believe that's really what her faith and resilience is what sustained her through multiple children.
Interesting. And how did Hobart Freeman, who had a rule against no TV, no radios, how did he bring your mom and dad into his fold, into his world, when she was such a devout Christian from, is it an evangelical church?
Yeah, so it would have been like an evangelical background. Obviously it was a black church, so it might have had a little bit of a different slant to it. But both when my dad and mom went to college, they met some friends there that introduced them to Hobart Freeman's audio sermons on cassette tape, and that's where my parents began to follow the teachings, and that's where they ultimately confessed salvation and became Christians. Excuse me, and they began to learn about Christianity, began to determine what kind of life they wanted to lead, and then ultimately that led them to pursuing this cult life at the time. That if you would have heard the sermons back then, you wouldn't have thought that they were that extreme at the time. But as his teachings began to progress and the years moved on, he got more and more restrictive and more heavy-handed and harsh in his belief systems. So,
and were you born into them already being a part of his flock, or were you maybe in the next 3 kids and then the last 5? Like, how did that progression of their lifetime together work in your timeline?
Well, they definitely had, I think by the time I was 3-4 years old, they were pretty. I guess more or less would say, yeah, that I was born into it. And they by that point were pretty entrenched in really discovering Christianity, and that's kind of by that point. I'm 4 and 5 years old. My dad is praying regularly, reading the Bible regularly, and now it's kind of their life. Yeah.
And so everything you knew and your brothers and sisters ever knew had to do with this program, this pastor, Hobart. And was it a commune, or did you just go on Friday and Sunday days? Like, how did you interact with this pastor?
Well, there's a kind of a context. There's some of you saw the Jesus movie done by the Irwin brothers. That era was the Jesus movement in the 70s. And Hobart Freeman was very much a part of that, which was really began the televangelist era. And there was a kind of a process. Hobart Freeman started with a Bible study in his house, then moved to a barn out in the country in northern Indiana, and then ultimately to a warehouse-style brown building, much like probably like the size of a Walmart. And so by the time my parents were starting to really follow, he was in a building they called the Glory Barn. And if you go to Backwater Road, Indiana, in North Webster, you can see a chimney that's still erect after the barn itself somehow mysteriously burned. But that was like a Pentecostal, hand clapping, dancing, shouting, kind of the, what you would probably expect from a Pentecostal kind of experience. They kind of moved more to what they call a charismatic or non-denominational experience.
But you didn't live there Monday through Friday and work a farm and feed everybody. It wasn't that kind of commune.
It wasn't that
like
kind of
commune in California. It was, hey, we're going to church tonight, and it would be this, like the movie Sinners almost, where you go to a barn and you start worshiping.
Yeah, I mean, it had a loft, and they had it had chairs, and then chairs in the loft, and then obviously he had a pulpit to do a sermon from, and we had our Wednesday services, Sunday morning and Sunday night services were a very, very common thing. As it began to progress, the commune effect was that everybody, subscribed to this belief system and kind of acted as a community there in Wilmot, Indiana, North Webster, Warsaw, Fort Wayne, Columbia City. Those areas were kind of dominated by the people that attended, and it became kind of a...
How many people would you say at the height?
Anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Wow.
He had a worldwide constituency of people that listened to him on radio. He did agree with radio. He did not believe in television.
Right.
He
Which
believed
is the same time as Crystal Cathedral was going on in Southern California, which was the big satellite. He was anti that.
Yes. I mean, he, all of his contemporaries, Kenneth Hagin, Kenneth Copeland, Jimmy and Tammy Baker, those people were all contemporaries of his. The Full Gospel Businessmen's Meetings, and the Women's Aglow, which were kind of parallel kind of communities that did conferences, one for men, one for women. That was very popular at that time, and he didn't believe in television, so he was on radio, and he had books and then sermons, and then people donated to...
So that's when they say worldwide, it was the distribution of his books and his audios and his radio, not like the 400 hour, the Billy Graham's tours or the TV shows. He was you had to see him local live if you really wanted to see the man.
If you had to see him, or catch him on radio, and he was behind the Iron Curtain. He was had people receiving his sermons in China. He had churches and satellite churches in Africa, satellite churches all across the U.S. He was definitely kind of through radio and through that kind of passing the sermons around.
And his famous quote is, "God was obligated to heal the true believer," right? So he got the worldwide following. I'm still a little curious as to why. Why do you think he, with all those other peers, like you said, that had bigger distribution, why do you think what message do you think he was delivering that people wanted to hear?
I think, he had a certain amount of charisma. He had a certain amount of command, and kind of the ability to establish himself as an authority in his space as a leader. But he also, for, lack of the fact that he went off, and went, way too right of center. He did give a message of hope. He did give a message of healing, that God would heal you if you were sick. But, of course, it became too extreme. But so because that message was life-giving to a point, people were attracted to that message. And there was a lot of the evangelical movement and the non-denominational charismatic movement, the Billy Graham movement, and then your TV televangelist movement, which were typically, the people that believed in speaking in tongues, believed that healing was for today. The evangelicals didn't believe healing was for today. They believed it passed from a different dispensation, and it was no longer valid to pray for healing. You could pray for it, but God probably most likely wouldn't bother with you, and that was those two different streams of belief systems. And so,
I read somewhere that 300 of the parishioners died because he was also against medication of any kind.
Yes. That is at least what what they were able to document. Definitely did not believe in medical treatment. Would get up and read the medical journals in the sermons. Malpractice this. Sewed up gloves in a patient, sewed up scissors in a patient. He was always quoting those disasters out over his sermons.
So he was very anti-modern medicine as well as TV. So he was trying to keep it a little bit old world, to keep his word in the forefront, even more so than, say, the Bible, I would say.
Yes.
And so what year did you leave that area where you could no longer really participate?
So we went there in 1984. I was 8 years old at that time, and then we left there in 1991. Hobart Freeman died in either that year or 86 or 84. He passed away, and then the son-in-law of the pastor took over the church and tried his hardest to kind of steer the church toward a more grace-based, more open and more sane message and a doctrinal position that the congregants would follow. And of course, all the hardliners were like, "Oh no, you abandoned all rational. You're not preaching it like Hobart. You've
so
gone."
It really was a cult of personality, like a Jim Jones versus, say, just a really good pastor in Nashville, Tennessee, who could tell the story. And so this was by 14 years old when he had died for you.
Yeah, probably was 9 or 10 years old when he passed away.
And so your youngest sibling would be just newborn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of what happened there is that period of time, Hobart was, I lost my thought.
During his last years of life?
Yeah. Well, he stepped on a nail.
Oh.
And then became gangrenous, and then ultimately
tetanus got him.
Yes, and there was a lawsuit happening at that time for pretty high stakes, both financially, and there were some criminal things that he was facing prosecution for. Okay. So as his health deteriorated, it became more and more evident that if his suffering continued, he would eventually not have to show up for court for these dates. Oh. So there was kind of a martyrdom kind of. As his parishioners saw him refusing medical treatment and standing for what he believed was the teachings that he needed to adhere to, which is to refuse all treatment, then it became he was so resilient right up to the last minute. He just fought, and God didn't let him get healed. And then, then those crazy people in the courts couldn't get him, so it was kind of a very sad kind of dynamic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And did you personally interact with him quite a bit? Did you look up to him? Was he a father figure to you? How did you, while you were growing up, consider him? Did you think he was just this old guy that had mom and dad wrapped around his fingers, or what was your impression of him?
Very interesting. The first service that we went to when I was 8 years old, I had a white sweater on with one of those zip-up turtlenecks, and it was crocheted knit, and it had like the twist down on each side, and it was white and it zipped up. And I remember walking into his office, and he says, "Hello there, young man." I was the person that I was the first one that walked into his office, as my parents wanted to meet him that very first Wednesday night that we were introduced to him in Indiana that night at service. And I remember it being a very fluorescent light, and him sitting at kind of one of those fold-out tables with, just kind of a very stark, kind of almost like an interrogation room. That's the kind of very stark, very flat-looking space.
Yeah.
And I walked in the door. "How are you, young man?" I remember him saying that, and so you kind of get that the era that he was from. You remember the song Moon River?
Oh yeah.
And you remember Moon River, wider than a mile. Like that's like if he would sing often at the end of the services, and that's the voice he would sing with, And so like that's like that World War II era,
yeah. Baritone, bass, yeah.
And so that's it was all very dramatic, like kind of drama, kind of just this very. It was a thing, it was a
like you were meeting a powerful man.
You were meeting a powerful
important
man.
person in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean everybody's media cameras or newspapers are coming to the church, and when he was going through this litigation, they're walking around with umbrellas coming down out of the down the courthouse steps to keep the media from paparazziing him, in Warsaw, Indiana. So it was, for a while I believed what I was hearing. For a while, I'd hear the sermons all the time on audio, and my dad would be listening to those, very intently. So for a while, I kind of thought it was reasonable. After a while, a heaviness began to creep, a darkness. It's like this is not very happy stuff. It's not very uplifting and inspiring stuff.
Not salt and light. Now, so you were the oldest. The rest of them had to be really close in age. Did you all get a sense at the same time that this wasn't going to be your entire lives, or did it come as more of a shock to others? In your family, your mom, your dad, you, and then younger from there on, were you all in on this, or were some of you rebelling, as children would do?
Well, we were all very young. So by the time we moved to northern Indiana from Ohio, we were, it's all we knew. So, we're living way out in the country. The church building is way out in the country in the middle of a cornfield, this 2,000 member church building. We're kind of seeing it kind of grow on us. And I'm watching my dad become less of a happy person or fun person or someone who's enjoying life. And I see him becoming heavier and heavier with this kind of darkness, I guess is the really way to describe it. And this kind of dogmatic, hard, kind of strict personality began to overtake him more and more and more. And so I watched our family become less and less loving, less and less smiling, less and less enjoying each other. We weren't a family that hugged each other or really said "I love you," or that it happened at times. But I look back now, and I don't remember much of that. So I watched my family kind of not, and nobody really rebelled until like we got to like 18, 19. Yeah. Like then at that point it was just get out of the house. Several of my sisters.
You were of the age to know the difference between the good old days and this darker, more violent also, right? Because there's a famous scene in your book where you take the paddle that he used for discipline and turn it into a guitar, which is a beautiful symbol also of taking an instrument of destruction and making it into a piece of art, right?
Yes, yeah, that's when my brothers and sisters, we all got out of the house. That was kind of our rebellion.
And Grandma saved y'all.
My grandma saved us when my youngest brother passed away. I had a 6-month-old brother when I was 14 who died of meningitis. And when he passed away, the authorities in the state came in and removed my parents as guardians. And then we were then removed, and my grandmother was given custody of us. At that time, there was 7 of us at that time. And we went back to Lima, Ohio from northern Indiana. And my grandmother began to take care of us and get us our medical treatments.
Just the 8 surviving kids, or mom and dad too?
Just us, just the kids.
Just the kids.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot for grandma.
Yes. She was in semi-retirement, and she came out of retirement to take care of us.
No grandpa?
My grandfather and my grandmother at that time were divorced, but we did see him as they were all, both my grandparents on my mom's side and grandparents on my dad's side, both were living at that time. But both of them were both divorced, and so my grandmother comes out of semi-retirement and takes us in.
And did she have a church that was more basic that she started bringing you all to? Mm-hmm.
We started going to a church called Christ Temple, Greater Christ Temple in Lima, Ohio. And my grandmother, both my grandmothers, my dad's mother is a singer, and my mother's mother was a singer. And they called her, her name was Sue Tucker, and they would call her Mrs. T. Mm-hmm. And we were in a Black Pentecostal Assemblies of the World church there in Lima, Ohio, on 2nd Street, and we would go to church, and they'd say, "Mrs. T, come up and bless us with a song," and she'd be in service, and she'd come up there, and she had a very, very high, soft soprano voice, and they would say, what are you going to sing for us? I'm going to sing "Jesus is the center of my joy," and "Jesus, you're the center of my joy," and the mic would begin to woo, feedback because they're trying to get volume on her voice, and my grandmother is probably like 5'6", very, very slender, petite woman, and she was just the sweetest, just the most gentle grandma you could ever ask for.
Wow, she sounds like a blessing to you all. That's fantastic. Have you, well, you're a Christian man. Have you forgiven your mom and dad?
Definitely have forgiven them. Your parents do the best they can. They do what they know to do at that time. They try to love you the best that they know how, based upon what they were taught, and then they, I think a lot of our parents try to say, well, I didn't get this, I'm going to make sure my kids get what I didn't get, So I believe that my parents would often talk about the 4th Street Baptist teachings, and they wanted something more for us as kids, and they felt like following this leader that his teachings were more substantial and more depth. Mm-hmm. And I would say there was some truth to that, with some toxic message involved.
Were they devastated when he died, or were they freed?
They were devastated, very much devastated. Unfortunately, my dad continues to this day to observe those teachings. My mom has awakened and has separated herself from that way of life, and the repressed and oppressive nature of the way that made our family. My mom has done very well for her own mental health and her own safety to make some changes for herself.
What component, and then I want to move on from it for a little bit, what component of it, Hobart's barn, let's call it, would you define that made it a cult versus, say, just a really popular church that has people coming there that, there's the guy here in Nashville, Locke, who teaches in a tent, and he's very powerful, and he just says a lot of controversial things. He's very anti-Catholic, for example. I don't know if that's a cult per se, or just a parish that's really got some conservative, extreme ideas. Like, how would you define your experience in a cult versus just a really charismatic church?
Well, we've all been around very charismatic people. The people that just have that it factor, have that thing that makes people feel a buzz, feel interested, and it kind of has that attractiveness to it. The problem is the cult thing is kind of the us versus them. And it's also who's the enemy that we're all fighting against, and we must at all costs avoid this evil or this set of and we are the only ones. We are the select few. We are the separated ones from all the other ones. And you guys over there, that is the world. That is the wicked, and that whole, if there's an enemy, then you have the ability to give people like an antagonist to something to be against. And a lot of times there's so much what we are against that you almost have no idea what they're for. And then there's also usually a very strict adherence to some kind of rituals or some kind of don'ts, like do not do this, do not do that. And there's a very strong litany of rules that you must not break at any time ever. In that if you do, then there's this heavy-handed voice that will come against you by way of what the sermons are being preached, and then also by the community that's always trying to adhere to that. So that constant angst is a very much a component for how the teachings created that cult environment, that created that capacity for people to feel the exclusiveness of being part of this group versus going to one of the other charismatic or evangelical non-denominational churches or churches that just had a nice popular element to them.
Did he demand a high percentage of people's incomes or something like that to keep the church going? Okay.
Well, here's the people were very generous, and the church made millions, but really was control. If you felt a sense of security that if you were adhering to the control, the tenets of that control, then you felt a measure of safety, you felt a measure of predictability, and you felt like there was a level of piety and devotion to God by way of those rules that you adhere to.
The more you obey, the more godly you are being, and he was just the conduit or the middleman to tell you you're either on the reservation or you're off. Okay. Which is where the cult of personality comes in, is that if you didn't trust him, respect him, or weren't attracted to this man, you wouldn't listen to what he's saying. And like, who are you to say what God has to say? Unless you're like, oh, well, you are hearing this directly from God. I will do this. Abuse, drugs, alcohol, any of these things that you hear about from other cults, any of that going on, like with the children?
Yeah, there was definitely some very shady activity in the way of abuse. Not only physical abuse, whippings and paddlings, and also sexual situations that were not as rampant as in other situations, but there were circumstances that did occur, and there were a lot of for what this organization was about. There wasn't a whole lot of that because they were always trying to do things the right way, and unfortunately, that cult and don't do anything wrong constantly kind of made for people that we didn't have a whole lot of that, because there was always a prosecutor at nearby, that was gonna, they were trying to always root out sin.
An enforcer, so to speak. Yeah. Okay. Keep everyone in line, make sure they were on. All right. So shifting gears a little bit, New York, LA, Chicago, with its blues and jazz. Atlanta, Seattle had grunge when I was growing up. Austin, New Orleans, of course. Those are some of America's biggest music cities. How did you pick Nashville out of the hat to make it happen coming from?
Well, I started playing music when I was 12, writing songs, listening to Susan Ashton, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Ron Canole, who just passed away, Michael W. Smith. Every once in a while, I hear some Def Leppard on the radio, because the radio was for listening to non-Christian music was off limits. So that songwriting became my gateway to letting my feelings and emotions out. And music I was always making instruments or making drums out of grit boxes or oatmeal boxes, and making that little guitar. And then getting my first guitar at the age of 12. Coming into Nashville in 2009, I'm out on a car lot. I'm obviously graduated from high school and in the workforce. And I'm out there in a Honda Civic sitting in the hot sun. And we're at Alanot Honda Toyota in Lima, Ohio. It's dead summer, so I got the air on, sitting there keeping cool, waiting for the next customer that wants to see a vehicle. And a guy drives up in a oxblood BMW, and he gets out. He has the frosted tips back then, looks a lot like, Ronnie Dunn. And he gets out, and his parents are with him, and he says, I want to see a Honda Element. And he tells me he's from Nashville and that he's a songwriter and that he's written I Melt for Rascal Flatts, How Strong Are You Now, Tattoos on This Town for Jason Aldean. I start asking him about Dan Huff, who's an amazing guitar producer for Keith Urban and Little Big Town and Rascal Flatts. He knows that. He knows him. I asked him about Susan Ash, and he knows Susan Ash. I asked him about Wayne Kirkpatrick. He knows him. He knows all these people I've been reading about in these CD jackets, and I've never seen them. But he tells me he's in Nashville, and he started kind of telling me about his country experience, and I'm like, he probably knows these people. I started asking him. He had talked to many of them within weeks of coming to Nashville. He asks to see a Honda Element. We give him a test drive in a Honda Element. His name is Wendell Mobley. We get done with the test drive. He says, well, I want to buy this car, this, SUV crossover for my parents. And he says, if we can do $23,000 out the door, can we buy the car? So I go back in, ask the manager. He says, yes. He gets out a check, writes a check to $23,000, pays cash from songwriter money from Nashville.
Who knew?
And who knew, right? And I remember I had the only sale of that day. And I remember getting done with that and staring out the window like, what was that? Why did that guy come all the way from Nashville to Lima, Ohio, go get his parents from St. Mary's, Ohio, and then bring them back to Lima, come to the dealership, walk up to me, and then go, and I had a CD. I ended up giving him a CD I had in my car. And that day just stunned me. I'm like, what was that? And then 2 months later, the economy began to crash, and the management at the dealership let everybody go, downsized us all out, except for one salesperson on the Toyota side, one salesperson on the Honda side. And 9 months later, I get a call from my buddy Leroy Pirtle. He says, hey, man, I got a record deal at Warner Alliance, which is no longer in existence, but it's a Christian gospel black record label. And this guy played keys for C.C. Winans, for Karen Clark Sheard, for Fred Hammond, for all these different black gospel artists out of Detroit. And now he was in Nashville. He says, come down and visit. I drive down to visit. I come here to Nashville, get to the Cool Springs area, my brakes go out, strands me in Nashville. Here I am.
And you mentioned Rascal Flatts. You had some help early on from Jay DeMarcus?
Yeah, Jay DeMarcus and a guy named Darwin Moody had a label called Embassy Music, and they would bring artists into Nashville, do these seminars on songwriting and contemporary Christian music at the time. And I got to meet Jay DeMarcus as a producer in that time before he was in Rascal Flatts. Wow.
So you are kind of pegged or known as blending traditional country and bluegrass. That's what I hear. Black banjo playing country musician, not a very common situation in the 21st century. Do you take inspiration from those Detroit gospel types, and are there others that inspire you?
Yeah, Keith Urban, Rascal Flatts, Wayne Kirkpatrick. Wayne Kirkpatrick wrote "Change the World" for Eric Clapton, and he's produced Little Big Town. He's produced Susan Ashton. He's produced Amy Grant. As a producer, Wayne Kirkpatrick. As a guitar player, Dan Huff. Also as a producer. And then, I grew up, listening to grunge. After I got out of the cult, I ended up, listening to all the grunge and Alanis Morissette and, all that era. Then I ended up, getting connected into, Fred Hammond and, Kirk Franklin and all the big names. through black gospel. And then I got into country, listening to George Strait. Funny story, because all this is kind of coming from multiple directions at me. So I'm very multi-directional musically, but my first encounter with country, I ended up listening to the radio while working this summer job in Lima, Ohio, working for this guy named Don Michaels. Don Michaels ran the street department in Lima, Ohio, for the lawnmowers and the plows and, all the street crews that would go out and, keep all the parks looking wonderful, mow all the grass, do all that. So, but I was a computer whiz at that age. And so they would bring in these, they had these file cabinets full of 3x5 cards with work orders like oil change the bearings, and it was all on paper. And so my job that summer was to go through all those file cabinets and type all that into DOS, into Windows. And so they didn't understand computers. So that was about 15 years old. That was my job for a summer job. And for a whole summer, I'm hearing, you can feel bad if it makes you feel better. And picture me crying, reading all your love letters. That ain't no way to go. Like I'm hearing all this stuff and I'm like, why is people hating country? This stuff is actually pretty cool. And I'm hearing, the north moves south, the south moves north, a star is born, a star burns out. Like I'm like, this stuff was great country, 90s country,
Charlie Pride.
And it was a little past that era, so I didn't get introduced to him till later, but the funny thing that I wanted to get to is he had a radio up above my computer's here, my desk is here, and my back is to the door. And so one day I was listening to all that music and I said, I'm listening to all this secular music. I probably should turn it to Christian music. So I turned the radio to Christian music, and about 4:30, Mr. Don Michaels would come back in. The day is almost over at 5 o'clock, and he'd come back in at 4:30, and everybody would come in, and the shift would basically begin to wind down for 5 o'clock. And I look up on the computer screen, and I can see him reflection in the back, leaning up against the door like this. And his legs are crossed over to one over, leaning up against the door. And I said, and I looked, and when he notices I see him, he's like, who changed my radio? Who changed my radio? Don't you ever change my radio. Next thing I know, my head is pushed up against the computer because he's only like 5'4", and he's over.
He's changing it back.
He's changing it back and almost knocks the radio down. And I was like, well, there's that. I won't be listening to country the rest of the summer. And that's more or less how I got to listening to country
That is
music.
an amazing introduction to a world of music that you had no exposure to. So that is really cool that you evolved into it, because now you are part of the country scene.
Yes.
Did you ever work with any of the famous people you just mentioned, or even meet them?
Yes. It's crazy. A thing, Wendell Mobley, when I met him in that summer in 2007, 2011, I'm in this event. They're having a youth fundraiser for this organization that counsels youth, and they've picked this restaurant to hold the fundraiser, and they have musicians and myself and another couple of artists, and Ashley Cleveland was one of them that night. And Wendell Mobley and Neil Thrasher were coming in that night. So we performed earlier, and then at the middle point where the people were going to give their money, they had Wendell Mobley and Neil Thrasher come in. So I walked back in, and they're coming out and to come take the stage, and I ended up almost smack running into
For those
Wendell.
that don't know, Neil Thrasher happens to be a songwriter, a very famous one. Did Jason Aldean's Try That in a Small Town, and a lot of other legendary things in this town.
Yes. And so him and those two write a ton. And I remember bumping into him. I said, hey, do you remember me? I sold you that Honda Element back in 2007. He was like, oh my God, what? He's like, Neil, you remember this? Like, he sold me my Honda, and that was my first. And I gave him a CD again. So that was, one of my encounters. I've started writing with some really big hit writers. Brian White, who wrote Aldean's "Blame It On," I can blame it on you. I've gotten to write with so many hit writers. I've met Darius Rucker. I've met Marty Stewart. I've gotten to meet Winona Judd. Ketch Secor, who wrote. I've been a commercial with him in the Bank of America PBS commercial for the Ken Burns documentary. He wrote Wagon Wheel for Darius Rucker. It's taken me. The dream has really, really, been awesome.
From a car dealership to making it in Nashville. I always like to read authors for their reviews. Read their reviews to authors, the folks that they really invested in your story. They read it. Someone named KM said 5 stars, by the way. So congratulations. Always be kind. You never know what someone is going through. I bought this book after briefly meeting Michael. He gave some insight into his life. I was so curious of the whole story, I bought the book immediately. I couldn't put it down. This book is an incredible testament to how giving up on himself and God, not giving up on himself and God. After what he went through, I would imagine most people would abandon faith. He has a kindness that radiates off of him despite the many challenges in his life. He has stayed kind, determined, and faith-based. I hope the best for him. That's very nice. What would you say to KM, I guess, if you saw him or her again? Did he get out of it what you wanted when you wrote it?
Part writing the book for me was part of my exit after the cult experience, and having been out of it for many years by that point. I found out that a lot of the cult, I was physically out, but emotionally and mentally was still struggling and suffering with trauma and PTSD, and a lot of the negativity was still internally, harming me. So writing the book, shout out to Robbie Grayson and Trait Marker Publishing for helping me write the book, but also helping me write the story, helping me get those life coaching moments in front of me so that I could write the book. And what was the staggering surprise was that I actually had a story that I had for many years. I didn't tell the story. For many years, I covered it up. For many years, I didn't tell people where I was from or what the abuse and loss of my brother and, me suffering medical neglect with severe asthma and all that. I kept all that to myself. And then I found out that I needed to tell that story. And when I began to tell that story, not only did I see that it was something that people that suffered and wanted to find out if more, they were like, am I unique in what I've suffered? And then I found out for myself, I need to tell this story, and I needed to find healing, and I needed to get more of that air, an asthmatic's journey to find more. I needed more of that air for myself. So it was a simultaneous discovery. Mm-hmm. And then, as of, relatively recently compared to a lot of my life, I realized that story is healing for other people just as much as it's healing for me. So I didn't start out there, but have definitely realized that my calling and purpose with that story is a means of healing. It's a means of help. It's a means of giving, hopefully, inspiration and liberty to other people.
So people know that they're not alone. Absolutely. Estimates suggest there are hundreds to thousands of cults. The word cult is very subjective, of course. Highly controlled groups operating in the United States, with some experts placing the high-end estimates around 10,000.
Wow.
Why do you think they are so popular?
Looking for direction, looking for self-worth, looking for guidance, and also a sense of insecurity within believing that you can find the path of life for yourself without the involvement of said cult individuals. Like, you're basically placing yourself out there for this kind of like basically if you can't figure out life on your own, you have to have this help.
So if you don't have self-control, you go hand over your control to somebody like Hobart.
And you have a sense of powerlessness and also a sense of you don't feel authorized to live your own life, and also a sense of needing to be told what to do because you feel like you can't follow the path without this other force involving itself. And a lot of that comes from being in a home that probably was like that in a lot of ways. So then seeking that from others. And
what are some ways that's come out in your songwriting?
It's I put a lot of the pain and a lot of the suffering and a lot of the feeling into my lyrics, and it gave me the music gave me the ability to uncap those emotions and let them out in a safe manner instead of addictive manner or some kind of toxic manner. So it's come out in my songs where I was looking for hope, I was looking for options, looking for light, looking for inspiration, and so I found melodies in music. A lot of Wayne Kirkpatrick's very melodic music. So I've always been attracted to melody, which is the notes that you sing the words with, and so that's how I used music to give myself an escape from the cult.
Very, very cathartic. KM also said, you stayed kind. I know you to be very kind. He also said, not giving up on yourself and God. Did you have a hard time staying on the path with God because of these hard times? Like your father apparently turned very angry. You turned very kind. Something happened that put you on a different path.
Yeah. I had a buddy named Joe. I stopped going to church when I was like 21, and I couldn't decipher between what I had heard as a kid and versus the teachings that I was hearing from the other churches, because where I grew up, the teachings from the other churches was bad. And I'll never forget this pastor named Romy Fales in Ohio. I said, well, you guys are Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. I said, well, which one of you guys is right? He said, Michael, only God is right. And it was so funny because I realized I didn't have to figure out who was right. Like, it didn't have to, like, if I go over here, I'm doomed. If I go over here, I'm safe. So I realized that what he was really saying was, we're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to follow Jesus as best we can. We're all trying to have church and love people and do the best we can. So don't be so scared.
Yeah. Okay. So 9 kids. Did all of the other 8? I know one passed away at 6, so it doesn't count. So all the other 7s come out as what's functional or as well adjusted as you? Are they all suffering the same problems?
Well, the first 4 of us kids probably faced the worst of the Hobart experience. My other brothers and sisters are younger. They've all managed to go on and get married and do different things with their lives. For me, I think I probably suffered the worst. Maybe my sister after me, and my sister after her, and then my brother after that. I've not really been able to really see the journey through their eyes, as they wanted to stay in the background and not really share their stories. For me, I had to find my own personal journey and my own personal experience. So
none of them are showmen. None of them are out front musicians like you. You're the more extroverted, I guess we could say. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. None of them have really followed in that capacity.
Any of your peers from that? Must have been tons of families around you, all with kids around the same age. Any of them come out well adjusted?
Yes. Some of them have found some relief from the mental health. The cult experience was really an assault on our mental health. That's really, to me, what I'm probably have realized the most significant effect of it. And
psychological torture that you had to be freed from.
Yes, and I think limiting beliefs, toxic beliefs, the tragedies, and ultimately ending up in the triumph. The toxic beliefs and limiting beliefs that I told myself, and I know other people have been in similar journeys, that I told myself, the lies I believed about myself, the toxic things that I internalized, which affected a lot of what they called my kind of asthma, which was called stress-induced asthma.
Sure.
So, that was finding that freedom and finding my voice, for example, and which was writing the book and telling the story and then playing music. That got me to step out from behind the pain and step out from behind the poison.
And do you keep in touch with any of the other cultists?
We do have a Facebook page called Children of FA, and a lot of us through that page communicate and share stories, and a lot of people share their disappointment and their sense of loss and pain, as a lot of them have tragic stories similar to mine. And then there's also a lot of stories of hope and a lot of stories of recovery and joy and having moved forward in some capacity.
Yeah, by this point, a lot of them have gotten married, had their own children, raised their own families. So maybe a lot of spring revival happiness in that situation, especially if they're brought closer to God by the experience like you.
Yes.
I would hope. Any other famous names that people would have known would be like, oh, wow, Michael and so-and-so were doing that at the same time?
I don't know. Not that I know of. No, okay. Not a whole lot.
That's fine. Let's see. So you lost your brother because they didn't allow medicine, right? That's
yes.
kind of the reason. Did you blame the leaders or your parents for letting him die?
I didn't blame them. A lot of it, it was just uncovered and kind of shocking, or kind of that surprise and trauma that you experience when the tragedy struck. I didn't blame them. At that time I wasn't. It's kind of like watching a wreck take place, and you're not really one way or the other. You're just kind of observing. So as the years came on, I had to really deal with my own grief and own pain that I experienced as a result of seeing it and witnessing that and experiencing that. And then later on, I realized that I would need to establish some boundaries for myself. And, I've since disconnected from my dad because
especially you were dealing with your own asthma, which you probably knew that there were remedies for that they weren't allowing you to have. And had they let you have that, you would have felt better, but it would have taken the whole doctrine down, and then you would know your brother could have been saved too.
That's very true. I had 3-day asthma episodes. From age 11 to age 14, I went without treatment. And so I would, sit on the sofa, starting like on a Monday night, and wouldn't get up off the sofa till like a Wednesday morning, with those asthma episodes. Sometimes I came close to expiring. And to this day, I have a sensitivity to the let's say the realm that's not seen with the eye, because it's connected me to the sensitivity of that from being so sick and almost feeling like I was going to die.
In your death, you could see the other world.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Okay. And 3-day asthma, in hindsight, okay, you survived it. That's fine. At the time, the first 24, 48 hours, you probably thought that was it. This is the end of my life.
Yes. I mean,
what did I do with it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you not only play in that amazing country music documentary by Ken Burns, but learn about country music from it? Like, were there things along the path of producing that for you, Michael, learned like, wow, country music is really deep?
Yes. It's Ken Burns has a really profound way of telling stories. And so I really absorbed so many of those stories, the way, Black artists and Black songwriters and players and, our Irish and, Native American and the Carter family and different, just the way the amalgamation of all these factors came together to give us country music. Very, very, I got lost in so many of those stories. I watched every episode of that documentary.
Yeah. Me too. And so very American. I don't know if you know this, but Japan is often labeled an atheist country, yet for a nation perceived as one of the least religious in the world, Japan has a lot of cults, thousands, in fact. I want to know if you have any idea why. Has your music ever taken you to Japan? And, recently 4 years ago, there was an assassination of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in July of 2021, which fueled the controversy surrounding cults in Japan because that's who did it. Did your cult ever act outwardly in society or stay more under the radar? And did they ever come for you like Scientology will not really let you leave?
Well, Hobart Freeman did pass away, and then the cult ultimately did dissolve, and the church building is now like a warehouse for concrete or some kind of industrial work now. So nobody came for us. There were obviously naysayers and haters, as it were, that wanted you to stay in the doctrine and stay in the teachings. Japan, so far, the only invite I have so far is to go to China to perform music. But those are the only Asian countries I've been involved with so far. The Faith Assembly was kind of an under the radar thing, but the about as public as it got was the news media out of Warsaw, Indiana, and the things that got put on newspapers. And I do believe some of the stories did make national headlines. I think there may have been a Dateline, an NBC Dateline episode or two of it as well. So yeah.
Luckily, it didn't have the type of headlines like in Ghana, where the Jim Jones took everyone out with him. Tell us about MAP International. Are you still involved in that? Man,
MAP International, I would love to reconnect with them. I was with them for 4 years as an artist ambassador, and it was started by a pharmacist who had leftover medicines and decided to start a nonprofit, and Medical Assistance Program International is what MAP stands for. They go into countries where there isn't medication or there's lack of access or neglect, and they give medications to people, life-saving, sanitary, situations where they would be exposed to germs and viruses and things. And because these countries many of them are undeveloped in quite the way the United States is as third world countries. So it's been a real joy to, I got to go there and put together disaster health kits in Georgia. And a lot of times they go into these areas when a tornado hits, earthquake hits, bad weather hits, they go in and they do disaster relief kits, and they hand them out to people so that when they're in shelters, they can, they have first aid, they have dry shampoo, they have toothpaste, they've got ways to clean and stay sanitary to try to keep disease and bacteria down. So I would love to reconnect with them, but during that time, I would have people donate to them during my shows, and I would give a QR code and everything. So I'd tell a little bit of my story, and then hopefully it would inspire people. And I'd say, hey, if you're inspired by my story, give to MAP International.
There you go.
So
what's next for you?
I'm working on a bluegrass album. I continue to tell my story, working with, hoping to collaborate with some of the people that I've loved in country music and other genres as well. I have a band, and we are touring and working on a tour for the 2026. And I just, this creative endeavor, I just bought a tiny house.
Okay.
So thank you. So I'll be kind of showing people on my YouTube channel what that looks like as I put in different, upgrades and get it up to snuff.
Oh, fun.
And doing that.
People
just
can
finished.
Watch that on YouTube?
Yes. So I'll be, presenting my music story with that and giving people a glimpse into kind of my world and life with
Little
that.
Pink House or just Little House? Like John Mellencamp said.
Oh, yes. Little Pink Houses from you and me, yes.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you very much for your time and your honesty and sharing your story with us. We're at the end, so if you just tell everyone where they can go find out more about you, any upcoming dates and gigs you want to talk about, a tour, album you mentioned, when that will be out, anything, next book, where they can get your book, social media.
Yes. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to tell my story. They can go to michaelrix.com. If you want to see me on the socials, Michael Rix Banjo, and that'll give you, from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter, which is now X, to, TikTok, all the different platforms. If you come to Nashville, come to the local on West End. It's called The Local. I play
Vanderbilt.
Yep, by across the street from Vanderbilt. It was down by the Parthenon down there on West End. And it's I play every Saturday with my band from 4 to 6:30 if we're not on the road. And you can go on Bands in Town and type in Michael, Rix. You can see my show calendar. It's on YouTube and it's on Spotify too. Feel free to enjoy our music on Spotify, Michael, Rix. And I'm the guy standing in the corn with the banjo. So,
and real quick, do you want to give a synopsis of why you gravitated towards the banjo of all things?
After playing guitar for a long number of years, learning piano and playing it, I felt I needed a kind of a different approach to writing. So I wanted a kind of a different creative outlet, and I kind of felt like I needed, a new inspiration. So I went to Chef's Music here in Franklin. I picked up a banjo and ended up getting endorsed by Recording King, which is now owned by Alvarez. And I started taking lessons on banjo off of YouTube, and my finger picking experience from guitar over, well over 30 years of playing guitar. And so bluegrass and its authenticity, and one of my first studio sessions in town was at Steve Dady's studio with a producer named Daryl Bledsoe. And it was a bluegrass studio session that I went to. And I just remember really being surprised at how beautiful the music was. And then the banjo just gave me a different feel. It feels like musically, I really found my seat.
Yeah. You made it your own. You're going to play something for us?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
This song is called I Can See the Sun. It's on my EP called I Can See the Sun. It's gotten over 24 million streams. And this is the title track. And I had heard the melody in a dream, and I woke up realizing that I was hearing music, and immediately grabbed my iPhone and recorded what became this song. It's called I Can See the Sun. I can see the sun, see the sun coming up to greet me. I can breathe it in me. See the sun shining on you, shining on me. See the sun wake me up, it's a brand new day. Don't want to sleep this life away. Don't want to waste not one more day. Not one more day. Shake it all off if it holds me back. Get knocked down, get right back up. Get right back up. I can see the sun. I can see the sun coming up to greet me. I can breathe it in me. Ooh. I can see the sun shining on you, shining on me. Oh, ooh. I see the sun. And all of my fears and all of my pain, forgiving all who caused me pain. Who caused me pain? Nothing but love, faith and hope, and the strength I've gained, and the strength I've gained. I can see the sun. I can see the sun coming up to greet me. I can breathe it in deep. Ooh. I can see the sun shining on you, shining on me. Oh, ooh. I can see the sun. All I gotta do now, all I gotta be now is in front of me. All I gotta do now, all I gotta be now is just be free. All I gotta do now, all I gotta be now is in front of me. All I gotta do now, all I gotta be now is just be free. I can see the sun. I can see the sun. sun. Wake me up, it's a brand new day. Don't wanna sleep this life away. Don't wanna waste not one more day. I can see the sun.
All right. I think you would be very proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very much.
Oh, that was cool.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Thanks for coming back. I told you that was a good one, right? Feel free to drop a line in the comments section and let me know. And while you're there, please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how we grow and keep this content free for you. You can go to Substack and subscribe and pass it around and tell your friends that that was a good show if you think so. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Michael Rix, for finding your songs through hardships to great singer-songwriters. Country music has taught you that you really are a great storyteller. Keep it up. You deserve the rewards. You created your own unique combination of flailing, finger picking, and claw hammer, and moving between those three styles is 100% you. You found more air. Like your book title says, you would overcome personal trauma, and here we are. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. See y'all next time. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God. Let's close out with Michael Rix on banjo, Sunrise, over 24 million streams. Congrats, Michael.
Today is a brand new day, a whole new chance to roll the stone away, clear my mind, leave the night behind, the answers to questions I could never find. Sunrise, the sky wakes up and the morning takes my blues away, and it soothes the ache. Healing light, flooding in, breaking out, pouring through my window shade. It's a new day. And when you find yourself holding on, waiting, getting through the pain, you just wait. Sunrise.
Today, got no regrets, no blame, no shame, and life ain't over yet. There's more to do. Embrace this day and start up something new.
Sunrise, the sky wakes up and the morning takes my blues away, and it soothes the ache. Healing light, flooding in, breaking out, pouring through my window shade. It's a new day. And when you find yourself holding on, waiting, getting through the pain, you just wait. Sunrise. Feeling up, feeling low, fear and doubt, try to take your soul. Don't go and let it get you down.
Go and let it get you down.
Don't go and let it get you down.
Go and let it get you
Fearing
down.
low, fearing no, gotta learn to let it go, let it go. Don't go and let it get get you down.
Don't let it get you down.
Don't go and let it get you down.
Go and let it.
Sunrise. The sky wakes up and the morning takes my blues away. And it soothes the ache. Healing light. Flooding in, breaking out, pouring through my window shade. It's a new day. And when you find yourself holding on, waiting, getting through the pain. When you find yourself holding on, waiting, getting through the pain. When you find yourself holding on, waiting, getting through the pain. You just wait, sunrise. Sunrise.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.